Recently, I put out a poll on the community tab for my channel asking people whether they do or would encourage their own kids or grandkids to participate in sports cards, and why or why not. The responses were incredibly varied, and people had quite a variety of reasons as to why they said yes or no. In this video, I'm going to go over some of my own thoughts on this, as well as share a handful of the things said by others in the comments of the community poll. First, let's take a look at some of what was said in the community post, as it sparked some really good expressions from quite a few people. Well, at least quite a few people considering how small my channel is at this point. So overall, 81% of the people answered yes, they do or would encourage their own kids to participate in the hobby, and 19% said no, which I might say was actually more heavily yes than I expected it to be, but in the comments, there was a good balance of both yes and no, with plenty of good reasons for both answers. For the people who said no, the reasons were mostly related to either how expensive it has become, how it teaches a gambler's mentality, or how the community has too many suspect people in it. For the people who said yes, the reasons were varied, but I'd say a lot of it could be whittled down to that it's a lot of fun, and that could be a nice thing to share between a parent and a child. Some of the yes answers also emphasize that some of the potential negative things about the hobby could either be avoided if approached in the right way, or could be good areas for educational opportunities with a child to help them learn to navigate some of the challenges, which is something useful as a general life learning kind of thing. I really enjoyed the discussions that came from a number of these comments, and do be sure to keep an eye out for some of my community posts in the future as well, because we'll sometimes have some cool little discussions going on down there as well too. So I'm trying to figure out how to use that space meaningfully. So keep an eye on the community posts. I'll try to post some interesting stuff there occasionally. Now, my own thoughts about this question, I would say, are quite mixed. I would lean to yes, but I would definitely include a big but. I like big butts and I cannot lie. Now, one of the comments that resonated most for me was this one. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. Avoid gambling on ripping wax, avoid the drama scammers, focus on PC. Don't get caught up in the money aspect. As a sports fan, I think it's cool to collect your favorite players, teams. Also teach your kid about the negative aspects of the hobby. Don't hide the negativity. They won't know how to handle it if you shelter them. Educate them. Collect it as a kid. Collect now, 29 years old. 97.5% positive experiences. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. I think this is a particularly important point. I would say that even something like ripping open a pack of cards can be done with all sorts of different mindsets behind them. And if all I'm looking for is value for a good ROI on the pack purchase price, and that is what comes across to my kids when I open a pack with them, then I feel like really I'm just teaching a gambler's mentalities. That's not something I would want my kids to learn at all. And I think it would be really easy to slip down a slope that led to teaching gambling if I wasn't consciously and clearly aware that I didn't want to go that route. But on the other hand, if the ripping open of a pack of cards is something that is sharing a moment with my kids, and the cards themselves were things that sparked enjoyment from either an artistic standpoint or in a way that connects to something they like kind of thing, then it's completely possible to rip open some wax without a gambler's mindset getting anywhere close to us. One of the community post responses said that he likes to open packs with his young kids, and he has one kid who really likes baseball team mascot cards and another who really likes jersey cards. So when I picture a family like that opening a pack of cards, I can just picture the smiles and enjoyment that would come from opening that pack, and how the monetary value of the different cards wouldn't even have to enter the equation. It's just pure fun and positive family time. That's super awesome. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. Now, I don't mean to keep quoting this 1017 post like I'm writing a dissertation about it or something, but I also really love this other part. Quote, teach your kids about the negative aspects of the hobby. Don't hide the negativity. They won't know how to handle it if you shelter them. Educate them. I couldn't have said this any better. The negative aspects of the hobby are real. The negative aspects of life are real. In my mind, part of my role as a parent and as a teacher, since I've been a teacher most of my adult life, is to help prepare my kids to understand and to handle life's challenges in healthy ways. If I just do things to avoid those challenges altogether, then I feel I'm not doing my job as a parent, because then when my kids do face these kinds of challenges in their own life, they haven't had some guidance in their earlier years that had helped them figure out how to handle this once they are doing it independently. So I personally wouldn't let the negative aspects of the hobby, like the occasional shady character or the dudes really trying to cheat others in this way or that, stop me from encouraging my kids to enjoy the hobby in a meaningful and healthy way. Though I would absolutely try to figure out ways to help them identify those shady situations, understand those situations, and reflect with them on how they handle those situations if they're in them. So on the education tip, I actually think there are a number of different things that as a parent I use the hobby as a learning tool, or I could, if I'm not yet, I could in certain areas. For example, a few months back, Ziggy No mentioned in my comments, and he briefly mentioned again in the community post here, how he had opened a second COMC account with a small amount of money specifically to use with his kids as a space for learning about money, about how markets work, and just to get more familiar with the trading card landscape in general. Now, ever since he first mentioned that in the comments a while back, it's been kind of in my brain, and I've been trying to think of some cool ways and cool things I could do with my kids. My wife and I actually homeschool our 2 kids, so I'm always on the lookout for these kind of ideas that can integrate meaningful learning with real stuff, and I could see how something like this idea could have space for this exactly. I haven't started with this yet because with my own kids, because I'd like to structure it in a way that doesn't slide into a gambler's mentality kind of exercise, but it's something I think I will eventually be doing with my kids at some point in the near future once I've figured out how to approach it. At this point, as well as thinking about how it could create a space to help teach my kids about money and about how markets work and such, I also really like the idea of using it as a space to learn with them and do some additional research with them about things like the early history of some different sports and sports players, the story of some important figures and movements for civil rights like Jackie Robinson and Jack Johnson and others, which could also parallel some of the other stuff they've also been learning about in our different history classes over the past couple of years. And also, since both my kids love art, my 8-year-old daughter in particular has sunk deep into developing this skill. Just look at this amazing picture she drew recently. It's phenomenal. I could never do that. I could also see how there could be some cool art-related things within cards and within having a COMC account. If we were to look through some of the different unique-looking sets, maybe especially within the realm of like Marvel cards or Pokemon cards, which are the kinds of cards they've tended to be more drawn to anyways, and maybe they could try to create their own card designs for things they were interested in or for other areas of things that we've been learning about. Like I was even thinking with my son, we've been learning a lot recently about biodiversity, about farming actually, and how to plant different things next to each other, like companion planting, so that each thing supports each other thing to create a more healthy and self-sustaining ecosystem. I was thinking how cool it would be to create something like plant cards, like cool trading style card things that highlight how certain plants work well in a garden in combination with other plants, and how you could use it to create a really great biodiverse garden. That would be so cool. That would be such an awesome project. Uses this kind of card idea, uses the knowledge we've been learning in this science, and uses art, and kind of all combines into a cool project. So this is just some of the ideas I've been thinking about. Now, one thing that comes to mind when I think about this kind of educational related stuff is how when thinking about it, the ways I'm thinking about incorporating the hobby into my role as a parent is less about amassing cards and more about amassing learning and experiences, and not focusing in on the money aspects, and at least how I involve with it as a parent. Not necessarily how I'm doing it for myself independently, but how I approach doing it with my kids, because there's so much to learn. I personally love that even for myself, but with the kids, I would want to focus on that more specifically and be conscious about that as we think about how we're approaching it together. And as I'm thinking about it that way, I actually find even in my own efforts, it kind of keeps me a bit more grounded, you could say, even though I am definitely trying to make money in my own personal interaction with the hobby. Having that kind of more pure interaction with it helps me to stay a little bit more grounded. And the other thing I was thinking about in this topic is related to, my own experience as a kid with sports cards, and how, when I reflect back on my childhood, when I first got into card collecting, I think it was a really healthy thing for me. It was so much fun. My love for cards motivated me to try to think of how to make money. It taught me how to be wise with my money. It motivated me to do things with my friends and socialize with these cards were an important part of the social aspect. Everything was really a healthy thing. But as I got more deeper and deeper into cards into the later part of the 1990s, and I started to lose some of my interest in cards, And I think part of it was because when I first started, I'd look at the back of every card, I'd read every card, I knew the stat lines of like every player. I just loved every card, no matter what it was. I loved it. There were certain cards I was more drawn to and certain I was less, but I appreciated each card like it was special. But later on, when I would open a pack, 90% of the cards would immediately kind of get shifted to the side. I would forget what they were. I wouldn't pay them any attention, maybe more than 90% of the cards. And once I got to that stage where, there was only a few rare cards that mattered to me, then I was amassing a ton of stuff, but I had a lot less interest in what I was amassing. And I think at that point was when that shift started to happen, and I became less interested in cards for a really long time. So, I think that taught me something. As a parent, when I'm thinking about how to engage, encourage, if I want to encourage my kids in the hobby, if they show interest, it would be more about like appreciating the small things. I don't think there's a need to, I don't personally think there would be a need to amass a lot of stuff, but to open a pack of cards or a few packs of cards and to be able to go through and appreciate what if it's a sports player. My kids personally are more interested in Marvel and Pokemon, but even if it's that or Flash, the DC Flash cards my kids really like, but to look at it, to talk about it with them, with each card, what is something about the art, something about the story behind the character or something like that, so that you don't have to amass a pile of tons of things or seek out this one really rare and interesting thing, but just to have a meaningful interaction with that card as the catalyst. And then I think it could be really nice. So anyway, this is just some of my thoughts about it in a bunch of different ways. So I'd love to hear more. In the community post, we heard quite a lot, saw quite a lot from quite a few people. That was really great. But let's continue to this discussion here. I have a feeling this one will reach more than the community post does. So share in the comments below, what is your approach? Do you encourage your kids in the hobby? Why or why not? How do you do it? Do you feel like there's things that the approach that you take that are really beneficial? There's all kinds of different ways, and I would love to hear. I'd love to hear how you approach being a parent in the hobby. And I will see you in the comments below. Peace.